If you will, if you will take your seats, we'll begin. If you'd please take your seats. Can you hear it?
No, go ahead, say it again.
If you'd please take your seats, we will be able to begin the program on a timely basis, so please be seated. Please be seated. I think they can hear that, right? Yeah. You may not can hear me, but please be seated so we can begin the program. That sounded good.
Now they good.
That last time. Okay. If you'll please take your seat so we can begin the program. Okay, we need to begin our program, so if you please take your seat and we will begin. We really appreciate you being here. We're looking forward to a great program. Can we have more volume on the sound? Okay. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. We are delighted that you're here for our 2005 Business Forecast Luncheon. I'm Doyle Williams, and I'm honored to be the Dean of the Sam M. Walton College of Business at the University of Arkansas, and it's my privilege to be your Master of Ceremonies today. It's fitting that we have another record attendance for this event. We're up over 20% from last year. Almost 1,200 have registered for today's luncheon. So that's a great, great turnout, and we thank that support. We are going to be very tight on time because we want to allow as much time as possible for our forecasters to give us the word, and so we would ask that you go ahead and proceed with your luncheon, with your meal, and we will, in the meantime, continue with the program that we have for you today. We are very pleased to again offer this program with the support in conjunction with the National Association for Business Economics and also the Walton College's Center for Business and Economics Research. So we appreciate their support. We'd also like to express our deep appreciation to Mary Ann Greenwood for her assistance over the years in helping us secure some outstanding speakers for our program, and this year is no exception. And also to Dan Grubb for his assistance in making this event possible. He's the one that brought to us the idea that he had observed from his alma mater, University of Chicago, where they hold this kind of event in Chicago and in Houston. And he thought we could do this in Northwest Arkansas, and approached us about it, and this is what is produced. Dan, I'd like for Dan and Mary Ann to please stand, and let's recognize them because they both help with our planning each year and make this a real deal. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We have many other distinguished guests with us today, and I'd like to recognize some of them along with our 2005 sponsors. This program is made possible because of the generosity of so many corporations and individuals, and we deeply appreciate your support. All the sponsors' tables have red ribbons attached to their table sign, and would each of these sponsors stand as I call your company name, and if you would remain standing, and we'll hold our applause until all the sponsors have been recognized. First is AEP Southwestern Electric Power Company. Arkansas Capital Corporation Group, please stand and remain standing, all the representatives of those companies. Arkansas Western Gas Company, Arvest Bank Group, Bank of Pocahontas, City of Fort Smith, Cooper Communities, Inc., Ernst & Young, First United Mortgage, First Security Bank and Cruz & Associates, Greenwood & Associates, Dan and Jody Grubb, FedEx Freight, McKee Foods Corporation, Moore Stevens Frost, Rebsman Insurance, Regions Bank, the Schmidling Foundation, Simmons Foods, Southwestern Energy Company, Swiester Construction, Tyson Foods, Vendor Managed Technologies Velocity, Walmart Sam's Club Foundation, and Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings. Let's recognize these folks for their great support for this event. Thank you so very much. We are especially honored today to welcome Lieutenant Governor Win Rockefeller and his staff. Lieutenant Governor, would you please stand, and thank you so much for joining us. Let's recognize the Lieutenant Governor Rockefeller today. We are also very pleased to welcome members of the leadership team for the University of Arkansas who are with us. And as I call your name, would you please stand, and let's recognize you. First, Chancellor John A. White and First Lady Mary Lib White is here. But stand, hold your applause to introduce them all. So if you would please stand. Vice Chancellor for University Advancement, Dave Gerhardt. Vice Chancellor for Government and Community Relations, Richard Hudson. And Vice Chancellor for Finance Administration, Don Peterson. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you. We're always honored to have with us, and I believe he's been here virtually every year that we've had this program, Congressman John Paul Hammersmith and his wife, Jeannie. Congressman Hammersmith and Jenny, would you stand? Thank you so much, Jenny. Thank you. We are really delighted to have a special contingent of representatives here from the Fort Smith area. It's always a delight to welcome our neighbors to the south, and we look forward to their participation in this event. And I think it'd be appropriate, because of their turnout, to recognize those individuals that are from Crawford and Sebastian counties or in the area. Would you please stand, and let's recognize you, and thank you for making the special trip up here, a large group of you, and we really appreciate that support. Thank you. Several of our faculty and staff members were able to join us today. Of course, classes are going on, so not all are able to be here. So I'd like for them to stand, and then after they stand, I'd like for the students to stand there joined with us. Many of our sponsors made it possible for a number of our students to attend. So I'd like for faculty and staff and then the students all join together, and let's recognize them collectively. Everyone that's with Walton College here, please stand. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Each year, as you recall, we ask attendees to make their forecast of key economic indicators for the year that has just ended. And you were asked to do this at this time last year. And so the question now is, how well did you do? And so to announce last year's most accurate forecasters, I'd like to introduce Rebecca Stubbs. Rebecca, if you'll come on up this time to the podium. Rebecca is the president of our Club Economique, Student Economics Club at the University of Arkansas. She's a senior economics major. She's in the Walton College Honors Program and obviously is one of our most outstanding students. So Rebecca, give us the good news. Who's the best forecaster in the room?
Thank you, Dean Williams. Well, each year at the Business Forecast, we invite you to forecast the values of 15 economic variables for the upcoming year. These variables include the growth rate of real GDP, the rate of inflation, interest rates, exchange rates, unemployment rates, commodity prices, the balance of trade, the federal budget, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average. We then give awards to the top 3 overall forecasters and another to the best forecaster of the Dow. Last year, 193 people participated in the forecast. We will first announce the overall forecast winners. First, our third place overall forecaster is Ed Clifford with the Bentonville Bella Vista Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Clifford, would you please come up? Thank you. Our second place forecaster is Dennis Schuett of Regions Bank. Mr. Schuett? Let them get their pictures. And finally, please help me congratulate the best overall forecaster for 2004, Mr. Larry Lloyd with the Beaver Water District. Now we turn our contest to the forecast of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Our contest participants from last year produced a consensus forecast that the Dow would grow 7% to 11,213 at the end of 2004. In fact, the Dow finished at 10,783, growing by only 3%. Our contest winner is Jamie Fields of the University of Arkansas Development Office. Miss Fields was off just over 1/20th of 1% with her prediction of the Dow closing at 10,789. Interestingly enough, this is the second straight year that an employee from the University of Arkansas Development Office has been the winner of this contest. So I suppose now we know where to get our financial advice from. You may want to visit them. Again, congratulations to all of our winners. Let me remind you to please fill out this year's contest forms. They should be in your packets. Make sure to forecast all 15 variables in order to be eligible for the overall forecasting awards. And finally, please make sure to fill out all of your contact information, including your email address, your phone number, etc., on the questionnaire side of the form. Thank you very much and have a wonderful luncheon.
Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate that. In addition to the forecast form that you have at your tables, you also have an evaluation form of today's event. So if you'll please fill that out as well. And you leave both of those on the table, and they'll be picked up after today's program. So appreciate you doing that. I would like to ask our panelists and moderator if they would please come forward and take their seats on the stage here. And as we turn to the heart of our program today. As they come forward, it's my pleasure to introduce to you, and for some of you, he really needs no introduction, but we think of him as one of our own, Harold Carell. Harold is going to serve as the moderator for today's program, and we are looking forward to that. And Harold, you also interjecting your observations, especially from the energy perspective, because Harold is chairman of the board, president, and chief executive officer of Southwestern Energy Company. Mr. Carell joined Southwestern Energy Company in 1997 as executive vice president and chief operating officer. Previously, he served as senior vice president of operations at American Exploration Company, as executive vice president of McCormick Resources, and in various positions with Tenneco Oil. He's a graduate of the Colorado School of Mines and a licensed professional engineer in Texas and Colorado. And in 2004, Mr. Carell was a finalist for the 6th Annual Platts Global Energy Awards CEO of the Year, national award, and Southwestern Energy Company was a finalist for the Gas Company of the Year. So congratulations, Harold, on both counts. This award is presented by the Platts, which is a division of McGraw-Hill and is world leader in energy information. We're very pleased to share with you that Mr. Carell serves on the Walton College's Dean's Executive Advisory Board and has been a supporter of the college in many ways. So it's a pleasure to welcome you back to Northwest Arkansas, and look forward to you leading us and moderating our wonderful panel today in our program. Thank you, Harold.
Thank you, Doyle, and I wish you'd have said one of the more important things, and that was one year I was the best forecaster here. I've forgotten what year that was, but I couldn't believe it, but I think I guessed gas prices better than anyone else. It's a pleasure to be here. Isn't this a wonderful event to have this many people present in Northwest Arkansas? And Doyle, I think you should be very proud, given that the World Economic Council is taking place in Davos, Switzerland today, so many of these people might have been somewhere else. One of the things that Doyle told me at the very outset here was that my responsibility was to keep this event on time, and now we're going to divert from the schedule at the very outset by asking these people behind me have asked to have some time at the podium. So I'm going to turn this over to Dan Grubb and to Marianne Greenwood.
Thank you very much, Harold. How about his stock has gone from $7 or $10 in 3 years to 50. That's his stock. Those of you who are investment people. In 1992, Doyle Williams and Maynard came to Fayetteville, Arkansas. Doyle was the dean of the business school of the University of Arkansas. Charles Charlaw was on the search committee that worked to find Doyle. And then later in that 1992, Charles had a luncheon at Southwestern Energy Company. And at that luncheon, he had invited Doyle to come and talk about his plans and goals and strategies for the business school. He had invited 10 people, or 15, I've forgotten how many, to that luncheon of business people. Some of you are here today. At that luncheon, Doyle described for us what his plans were for the students and for the business community for which University of Arkansas served. They were large and far-reaching. He wanted to be the research and resource arm for the business community of this area. Now that's a lot, saying a lot. He wanted to develop programs that could really benefit all of Arkansas and all that the university serves. As a result of that conversation and setting his goals, I mentioned to Doyle, I said, Doyle, come to my office just for a few minutes. I do have an idea I want to share with you. The University of Chicago, as Doyle mentioned earlier, has a luncheon similar to this each year in December, in which they invite their alumni and friends to discuss economic issues. I told Doyle that if you take that format and that plan and meld it a little bit, and it would fit for the University of Arkansas, and he could fix up a major program called, which finally wound up being the University of Arkansas Business Forecast Luncheon. I also told him that if he did that, because of the diversity of businesses in this area, he would need to have a regional, a national, and an international speaker, and that he could invite some chief executive from a company to be the moderator of those discussions. He liked the idea. It took us about 2 years, Doyle, where are you? You're here behind me. It took us about 2 years to get the program to put together, but in January, on a very cold January in 1995, he established the first University of Arkansas Business Forecast Luncheon, annual event number 1. There were 300 to 400 people in this room at that time, which is about this size. As I look around the expanse of this room, Doyle, there's 11 to 1,200 people. You have eclipsed what the University of Chicago does at their business forecast luncheon. We are all very proud of you. You have done much to enhance the goals that you established some 11 years ago. Mary Ann?
Doyle, we're very proud. You've done wonderful things for the Walton College, for the University of Arkansas, and we want to say thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate the support of everyone here, the business community at large. It's really been a wonderful experience, but Dan, you've used too much time. We've got to get on with the program.
Okay, moving right along, one of the things I did want to say is while our speakers are doing their presentations here, that you'll have the opportunity to ask questions, and I think someone will be picking up questions maybe that are out there on cards that would be delivered up here that we can ask the panelists once they have completed their talks. In trying to keep with the on the schedule here, I want to tell my fellow panelists that what my intention is that about the time your time is up, you might see me standing up and walking around, and then if you see me getting my coat to leave, you'll know we've turned the Doberman loose from behind the screen. So you've got 2 warnings there. But with that, I do want to move into the program. We have 3 general areas of discussion here today: international, the national, and the local and state economies as one. And I think we should launch right into that. I did have the opportunity this morning for about an hour to sit with this panel and take questions from students over at the university at the Rental Center. And so we've had a bit of a warm-up, and that was a fun thing to do. So let's begin with the international talk. John Minzer will be the first to come up here. He is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Walmart International and Executive Vice President of Walmart Stores. He holds full operating responsibility for all the company's international operations, including Argentina, Brazil, Canada, China, Germany, Japan, Korea, Mexico, Puerto Rico, and the United Kingdom. Quite a lineup. Prior to 1999, John served as the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer for Walmart Stores after joining the company in 1995. Previously, he was president of Ben Franklin Stores. He led the Walmart team in the acquisition of Asda in the UK, and in 2004, John received the Retailer of the Year award for Walmart International from DSN Retailing Today. In 1999, he received the Chief Financial Officer Excellence Award from CFO Magazine, and he holds a BBA and MBA from Loyola University and is a certified public accountant. With that, I would like to introduce John to you to give us his thoughts on the international, particularly focused, I think, on China.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. And first, Doyle, congratulations to you. You have just been a tremendous contributor in the 10 years that I've known you to the University of Arkansas. You should be very proud of all your achievements. I look up to you for what you've done. Fantastic. Okay. Today I would like to talk to you about the developments in the global economy and more in detail about China. I personally travel about 50% of my time, and it's primarily outside of the United States. So I have a pretty good perspective from the outside looking in, and sometimes I see things differently. China is the most fascinating place that I travel around the globe. It's a mixture of a country that is now filling up with cars in ultra-modern cities. But when you drive outside to the rural areas, you still see water buffalo out in the rice fields. Just an amazing, amazing dichotomy. At Walmart, our 2004 reporting year is coming to a close. At 11 months, our sales were $265 billion, with 1 month to go. We will release our results in the middle of February. When we look at the global economy, we see it from two things. Number one is on retail stores, and second is on our product sourcing operations. We now have over 5,600 stores in 11 countries. Plus, we have 24 sourcing offices, and we are sourcing merchandise from 70 countries around the world. That would include Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America. So Walmart really does have a global reach. Outside the US, we now have close to 2,000 stores, including our minority interest in Seiyu, Japan. We did something early on, we called it flag planting. We put a small number of units in different countries, like Brazil. And so our theme now is to fill in the countries we're in, to bring mass stores to those markets so we can use our technology. That is one of our major focuses today. It's very difficult, as you can see, to travel because we have about 2 countries in every continent. So we're very, very spread out today. One of our biggest challenges is to service one customer at a time in a world of 6 billion people. We have to understand the demographics in every country and adopt Walmart's store of community within every country, in every region within every country, like we do in the United States. Today I will talk about the outlook in many of the major markets around the world. I'll go into much more depth about China, and I'm going to talk about the impacts of globalization, and it's here to stay, and the world will continue to change because of globalization. As was mentioned, 2004 was an excellent year for Walmart, in particular our international operations. Walmart International was nominated by Discount Store Retailing Today as a finalist for Retailer of the Year. And in a voting of our peer group, both retailers and suppliers, Walmart International was named Retailer of the Year. And I can tell you, I'm just so proud of our 400,000 international associates around the world. So what do we look at? Well, in countries where we operate, we see a kind of a varied economic picture this year. Economic indicators we follow certainly are fuel prices, interest rates, country inflation, unemployment, and economic growth. These have a bearing not only on our customer spending, but also on our cost structure. During 2004, energy prices increased around the world. Average fuel bills in the United States were up 10 to 30%, depending on where you live and what fuel you use, whether it's propane, natural gas, heating oil, etc. This chart shows the U.S. weekly gasoline prices. This same curve was repeated in many of our international countries around the world. So for our customer, they had fewer dollars to spend, and they made fewer store trips because of higher oil prices. But our associates did a good job. We kept our sales strong throughout last year. Looking into 2005, economists' outlook for the growth in the world, real GDP, just under 4%. Economists indicate that retail sales will be slightly slower than the previous year. The U.S. economy has been the engine of growth for the world, and people continue to look at that. But there are many, many growth opportunities outside the United States. Today, looking at retail, over 70% of the world's retail sales are outside the United States. So at Walmart, we think we have excellent opportunities to continue to grow our international business. One of our themes at Walmart is to strive to improve the standard of living for our customers around the world. New England Consulting Group recently said that Walmart saves families $500 a year with our everyday low pricing. USB Warburg said Walmart grocery prices are up to 20% lower than our major competitors. This year, we'll open and expand over 500 stores on a worldwide basis. That's a big task for us. We expect to produce over 140,000 new jobs worldwide, including 100,000 new jobs in the United States. The retail industry is in rapid change. It's always in a state of flux, a state of excitement, newness, and new technology. It is very easy to fall behind in the retail industry. Constantly improving retail business, our retail business, is a very competitive market, is a challenge every day. As we open our attention to demographics, for example, in the U.S., one of the major opportunities for Walmart and others is the growth of the Hispanic market. Today, Hispanics account for 40 million people in the United States. That's excluding Puerto Rico. That's 13.7% of the population today, growing at a rate of 13%. Projections, 2010, 64 million Hispanics in the United States. By 2050, 103 million Hispanics. That would represent 24% of the U.S. population. Hispanics will continue to have a link to their heritage for generations. They'll look at their holidays, they'll look at their brands. We believe Walmart has great synergies. We are the largest retailer in Mexico with Walmart de Mexico. And using that knowledge of brands, using that knowledge of suppliers, using operations, systems, processes, we can help our U.S. operations from the knowledge that we've gained in Mexico. Okay, let's look now at the rest of the world. Our operations in the Americas go from Canada all the way down to Argentina. We've benefited from strong growth in Latin America. In fact, today it's our strongest performing area in the world is Latin America. In Canada, GDP growth has slowed. It's moderated to about 3%. We opened up 30 stores last year, and we'll open up about the same for this year. Walmart Canada was named the best retailer to work for in Canada, and we're very proud of that, and one of the top 50 best companies. In Mexico, GDP increased 4.4%, while our Mexico sales increased over 15%, a great performance for us in Mexico. And part of our everyday low price strategy in Mexico has helped us be successful. Walmart de Mexico was named the best retailing company in all Latin America by Global Finance magazine. Brazil GDP, very strong, 6.1% a year ago. we completed a major acquisition in Brazil, Bompreço, of 118 stores in the market, which we now have mass and scale in Brazil. In Puerto Rico, our operations continue to expand. The Argentina economy continues to grow very fast. GDP growth up 8% in the third quarter. 10th consecutive year of growth, 10th consecutive quarter of growth in Argentina after a very, very tough recession. Now moving to Europe. Those of you who have plans to go to Europe for vacation, you'll find out your prices are 20 to 25% higher because of the weakness in the dollar and the strength in the euro. It's a challenging economic period in Europe right now. We think it'll be very uneven performance. In the UK, the economy last year grew 3 to 3.5%, but the short-term outlook is slowing. Interest rates are rising. The housing market prices are actually declining today in the UK, but we're looking for stabilization. Our operation in the UK is called ASDA, and they continue to perform well. They were named Britain's best value retailer for the 7th consecutive year by Grocer 33 Awards. We are now expanding with a new format called George, which is our private label line of apparel. The Eurozone also includes Germany. It's in a mini recovery today. Factories in Europe are starting to slowly recover. But economic forecasts still question whether that recovery will endure. One of the challenges in Europe, they have not been able to successfully grow even at half the rate of the United States in the previous years. We continue to look for changes in the regulatory environment in Europe, such as extending and expanding the store hours in Germany, which last year added 2 hours to Saturday shopping. We were the first to implement that change and got fantastic response from our customers. Asia. Our associates were deeply moved by the tsunami, most recently in Asia. We held fundraisers around the world, in the Americas, in Asia, Europe, etc. We had collection points, including our Walmart.com operation, and all the way into Japan. Our company contributed over $2 million to the Red Cross to help the tsunami victims. In South Korea and Japan, economy continues to grow, but it's constrained. South Korea has economic issues, problems with the government budget, faltering job creation, and a slowdown in household earnings. Even so, our Walmart Korea operations delivered some pretty good results last year. Japan, we've seen a dip in business confidence. Tribute to a slower economic growth, rising oil prices dramatically affect Japan, and a stronger yen hampering exports. Now let me turn to China. How many of you have been to China? Can you raise your hand? How many of you? Okay, a good portion. We had our first Walmart board meeting ever in China in March. Many of our board members had never been to China, hadn't been to China for many years, and they were just so impressed. It is, again, a country that's moving very, very rapidly. 1.2 billion people. Urbanization is underway. People are moving from the rural communities to the cities where jobs are being created. It's a major, major demographic shift going on. What will be required? A staggering magnitude. New housing, new schools, new roads, power plants, and fortunately for us, more retail units. China is a very important market for Walmart. We opened our first store in 1996. Now have 43 stores in China, including 2 distribution centers. Walmart introduced donuts and rotisserie chicken to southern China to please the palates of our Chinese consumers. On the sourcing side, we've been sourcing from China over 20 years. This past year, we sourced over $18 billion of products from China on a direct or indirect basis. But let me keep that in perspective. Working with our U.S. suppliers, we bought over $138 billion with over 68,000 suppliers, including women and minority-owned operations. Our system is a positive force. Like many of our U.S. companies that are in China, we're a very highly desired employer in China. We've been also recognized by the Chinese government as a good corporate citizen, and we're very proud of it. Fortune magazine named Walmart China one of the top 10 most admired companies in all of China. We have just a great group of associates in China. 2005, we expect a slight decline in growth in China to about 8 to 8.5%. Since China opened its world to the rest of the world 25 years ago, GDP growth is averaged over 9.3%. One of China's advantages is they have a 30-year plan. In fact, this is their 5th 30-year plan. No, they haven't changed their existing 30-year plan 5 times. They've had 150 years of plans. And so they're long-term thinkers. There's stability of government. They know the direction they're taking the plan. We're making a big bet in China because we think that they are on the right path and they won't be deterred. In 2002, China actually replaced the United States as the top destination of foreign capital, and levels were at all-time high in 2003 and 2004. The average per cap income level in China today is just over $1,000. But already in affluent areas, it's now at $6,000. But due to the legacy of the benefit programs in China, most employers include subsidized housing, pension, and health care. So the purchasing power of that Chinese income is much, much higher. China is also a leading trade nation, now only trailing the U.S. and Germany, major importers of raw materials, energy, oil, and cement. But keep in perspective, today's China's economy is only 4% of the world. That's about the size of the state of New York. The United States, in contrast, is 28% of the world's economy. Economists predict, though, by the year 2040 or 2050, if their models hold up, China will be the largest economy in the world. Now, the average cap per person will be lower because of the enormous amount of population that they do have. China is a country of very eager consumers. This is positive sales increase in China now for over 10 years. The current trend is 10% increase annually in retail sales. A real key number for us retailers, the middle class in the next 10 years will increase by 10 times, 10x increase in the middle class in the next 10 years. It's a very rapidly changing environment. 10 years ago, there were chain stores with less than 20 stores. Supermarkets and department stores were dominant. Many markets were underserved. Today, there's consolidation, fast expansion, local growth of Chinese retailers, growth of foreign retailers happening throughout the country. Chinese consumers love brands. What could you do as a U.S. manufacturer? They love brands. I can tell you the Starbucks in Beijing, China, sells $4 lattes, which is a big part of somebody's monthly income, and there's a long line to get in. It's aspirational to be seen in Starbucks drinking a $4 latte. It's even a high price for me. We look at the acceleration of retailing in China. Effective last December 11th, the World Trade Association agreement opened up foreign retailers to grow in all parts of China. So we are now looking at cities outside of the special economic zones and the allowed areas, small cities to move Walmarts in China. They're called provincial cities. Small cities of only 3 to 4 million people. Walmart plans to open up 10 to 12 new stores this year in China and keep accelerating our growth. There are many aspects of success. I've highlighted a few. The quality of our associates. China has many multinational companies with large number of expatriates. We are very focused on growing our own talent in China. We're hiring hundreds of Chinese associates, training, comprising many of our executives of our company, and moving forward in Walmart China. We have only a handful of expatriates in China. An example is Maybell Leo. She's pictured up here. She worked at one of our distribution centers in China. She was an hourly associate 8 years ago. One of our distribution center managers saw what a great worker she was. We brought her here to Bentonville to attend our shareholders meeting. She went back to China and decided to learn English. She continued to move up to the company. She became operations manager, and now she's head of our distribution centers in China. Fantastic story for Mabel. Our customers, we're very attentive to our customers in China. They have both regional and local tastes, just like in the United States. They shop every day. They're looking for very fresh produce, very fresh food. We sell live fish in our stores. If you want to come in and choose a fish, it's an aquarium setting. You'll pick it out. We'll prepare it for you. Government relations. It's very strong to harvest your relationships with the government. We're very proud of our chairman of Asia. Joe Hatfield is a 25-year veteran of Walmart, was named the China Friendship Award winner this last year for his outstanding contributions to China, both social and economic accomplishments. I'd now like to talk to you about globalization. How is globalization affecting Walmart? Our workforce, our brands, our best practices, and making Walmart strong. Regarding people, we have a global talent pool that we draw from. We have one of our food merchandisers, an expert in food from Brazil, now working in Japan. One of our best Mexico merchants is now helping us in Germany. We continue to promote a global exchange. Talented executives coming back to work in U.S. operations, stores and clubs and merchandising, and then go back to their home country after one-year assignments. Our associates also travel around the world to share best practices. At a recent Saturday morning meeting, our German associates came in and told us they saw many single people in their stores on Friday night and developed a concept called Singles Night. And if you're interested, you can push your shopping cart, or your trolley as it's called, through our store, and we'll put a big bow on the front of your cart to signify you're single, so you can mingle with other singles in our store. And of course, our suppliers have helped us have little wine and cheese areas that you can stop to mingle at. That's a concept we're using in other countries now. Talk about coming global. We just announced Eduardo Castro Wright is our Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Walmart Stores, Inc. Formerly, he was President of our Walmart de Mexico operations. So we're really proud of his accomplishments. Globalization, it really makes our company stronger. It's regarding brands. Using national brands, extending our store network on a nationwide basis. Suppliers have joined us, U.S.-centric suppliers have joined us and moved with us to our 11 countries around the world. A great example is right here in this market, Tyson. Tyson had no operations in Korea in 2002. And Tyson, working with our supplier development team, completed a market feasibility study in Korea. Developed a program with Tyson, mixing loads of beef and chicken from the U.S. that was appropriate for the Korean taste. And today, Tyson has a great sales volume in Korea. Congratulations to Tyson. We're contributing new products. Procter & Gamble, we helped develop a product called Tide white hand laundry detergent in China. It's been very, very successful. We're helping small companies. We developed 2 years ago the Walmart Export U.S. office, and we're working with U.S. companies in exporting items, food, etc. around the world. We've had great success with our Great Value private label. We are now taking Washington apples and selling them in our Mexican operations. California tomato sauce, we're now selling in our Korean operations. Globalization is making our company stronger. We're taking best practices, we're moving it around the world. When Walmart first began internationally, the best ideas all came from our home country. In our case was the United States. But now our ideas are going full circle. Many times I don't know where the idea even came from, but we're sharing it around the world. Where the origin is, we move so fast we're not sure. But sharing best practices around the world. Take private label, our George apparel line in the UK. George is now the #1 selling apparel brand in the United Kingdom and is now in all Walmart countries. Another concept we globalized from Canada, our baby center concept. Taking the environment, taking our store, and setting up a full store within a store baby center has been very, very successful for Walmart, and again, a concept that's been used around the world. I hope you have a better view of what's coming this year. We think it's going to be another exciting year. We're going to work very hard at Walmart to make another excellent contribution. We are thriving here and around the world today. We are anticipating another strong year. In closing, I'd like to note that one of our focus areas is to really tell our story here and tell our story around the United States. I encourage you to check our website, walmartfacts.com, to get information about our company. You may have seen 2 weeks ago that we had a Set the Record Straight Day, and we had ads in over 100 newspapers to tell our story about what we're doing at Walmart and how proud we are of our associates and what we plan to accomplish. Thank you again for inviting me, and enjoy the day.
Thank you, John, and for sure, keep growing Walmart. This community is such an integral part of it. Our next panelist will be discussing the national economic scene, and I would like to have him come up just a moment. Gene Wang is the chief economist for FedEx Corporation and is managing director of the company's economic and industry analysis group. He's responsible for forecasting global economic and financial conditions and tracking and monitoring all industries that are served by FedEx. He is a member of the Blue Chip Consensus Panel, which provides economic consensus used by policymakers, the business community, the Wall Street Journal Economic Panel, and Business Week Business Outlook Panel. In 2002, Business Week profiled Mr. Wang and its most accurate forecast. He is a member of the board of directors of the National Association of Business Economics. He holds an MA from the Yale University and PhD from the University of Pennsylvania. He also holds a law degree from Fudan University in Shanghai and is the author of 2 books on business economics. And I would like to welcome you to the podium.
Thank you, Harold, for your kind introduction. I'd like to thank Dean Williams, my friends Mary Ann Greenwood, and the organizers and sponsors for giving me this opportunity here. I'm absolutely thrilled to see this audience, the size and the quality of this audience. This is the best crowd I've ever seen. And the room, the size of the room, the echo of this microphone makes me want to sing. So where do I start? Now let me start by telling you a motivational story. I always keep this back in my mind. The 2 balloonists, they ran into a bad weather. They were blown off course. They got lost. They saw a guy wandering on the ground. So they asked him, hey, could you tell us where we are? And this guy looked up at them and said, you're in a balloon. Okay, and these two balloonists, they look at each other, say, hey, you must be an economist. Yeah? How could you tell? Because your answer is perfectly correct, but absolutely useless. So, joke aside, I do hope the material I present today can have some practical use in your line of work. The end of last year, around December, I gave a few media interviews. I used the term macho to describe the holiday season because men's clothing was doing pretty well. Construction materials doing very well. Home and gardening equipment doing very well. Heavy-duty trucks, motorcycles are doing very well. So I used macho to describe the holiday season. But from the response I saw was not really appealing to journalists. So I learned a lesson beginning of this year. I just gave an interview at CNBC. I used the term Goldilocks to describe the current state of the economy. So we changed from macho to Goldilocks. Immediately I can see the click. It was picked up by quite a few medias, Bloomberg, Reuters, and so on. And that is not a surprise. To me, it is a very natural, inevitable thing. Why? Because men rule the world and women rule men. I use the term Goldilocks to imply that things are just right for this stage of the cycle. For instance, output, income, and employment, these are three key variables that economists look at as an indication of the strength or fundamental of the economy. They are all growing. Consumer and business sentiments remain very positive. You can see that from conference board surveys, University of Michigan surveys. Forward-looking indicators collectively point to continued expansion. And inflation is low. Inflation is moving up on a year-over-year basis, but the current level, if you put in a historical perspective, is still pretty low, pretty comfortable. Now, overall, growth is above trend. So it's a very comfortable position, and it has been confirmed by various government and industry surveys. The platform for which the economy springs into 2005 is very solid. Fundamentals are looking good. Activities during the holiday season were very strong, building up a steady forward momentum. Overall retail growth was 8.7% in December on a year-over-year basis. A year ago was a little over 6%, so you can see the difference. E-commerce continues to grow at 4 times the pace of overall retail. Based on my estimate, e-retailing currently accounts for about 8% of total retail. And this is a structural trend. It's a dramatic increase from almost nothing merely a few years ago. Moreover, if you look at the inventory to sales ratios, the retail inventory to sales ratio is at the lowest level in history. So this suggests that maybe no issues of inventory overhang in general, at least in the retail sector. And the momentum is also very evident from factory sales, from wholesales, and from industrial production. They are all expanding at a pace noticeably above their historical norms. Factory orders, I don't know whether you pay attention to the release yesterday, durable goods orders was very strong. In fact, factory orders, last year's growth rate for 2004 at double-digit pace was the strongest in a decade. Unless we encounter major shocks, I think the momentum alone can carry the economy through the first half. It looks like the transition from an early cycle rebound to a mid-cycle expansion is happening in good terms. Historically, it took about 2 years for the economy to pass the initial rebound stage and enter a longer period of more sustainable mid-cycle expansion. And this time it took about 3 years for the initial stage to conclude. The characteristics of a mid-cycle environment are all about sustainability. Real disposable income, the growth in real disposable income is expected to be slower because the inflation is rising and fiscal stimulus, fiscal incentive may no longer be in place. So the support to consumption is mainly coming from continued expansion of the labor market. And the rising costs in material, labor, and capital inputs are slowing down corporate profits. Eventually, will constrain business investment. A lower structural productivity down the road and rising labor costs also translate into higher unit labor costs, increasing output price and inflation. Also, in this mid-cycle environment, policy will shift towards neutrality with higher interest rate and less fiscal stimulus. In fact, we are not counting on any contributions from the fiscal spending in the environment. Inventory upcycle in the early stage will end sometime down the road, probably this year, probably early next year. In its place, we'll see structural need in capital spending growth, which will extend the industrial cycle. Gradually, slacks in the economy will recede and competition will intensify in mature sectors, in mature segments. With cash accumulated in the early cycle and more challenges down the road in grow business organically, we can expect more M&A, merger acquisition activities down the road. So these are the general characteristics for a mid-cycle environment that we can expect. John just talked about international outlook. Indeed, we are living in a highly integrated world, linked by global supply chain management through both the goods and the asset channels. We think the U.S. will continue to be the growth engine because U.S. remains a positive growth and productivity differential versus other developed nations. I absolutely love this. You cannot see this picture right here. Following the U.S. is China. China's economy is rapidly expanding in an environment some analysts call extended cycle. In the US, we call it the beginning of mid-cycle. In China, we call it extended cycle because you've never seen a downturn in China. China continues to have a strong import demand for commodities and intermediate goods. Together, the US and China are defining the current industrial upcycle. If there is some consensus among Wall Street portfolio strategists in sector allocation these days, clear bias towards the industrials under a context of above-trend performance across virtually all cyclical sectors. In the US, I just share with you some historical numbers. Capital spending growth has continued on a year-over-year basis for 7 consecutive quarters now. To put things in a historic perspective, capital spending grew 37 consecutive quarters from 91 through the first quarter of 2001. So the last cycle, the mid-cycle environment, the capital spending expanded 37 quarters. We have seen 7 quarters so far. Now, while we can draw some comfort from this historical reference, there are also other factors that will support an extended industrial upcycle. Let's talk about them. The US economy is emerging from 2 major adjustments. The first one is a cyclical adjustment characterized by an inventory cycle. As we all know, business cycle is essentially an inventory cycle because we lack of the ability perfect foresight. There will likely still be some room for inventory rebuilding through this year. The current level of inventory to sales ratio is still below the trend line, as you can see from this graph. And the trend line has been established in the past 2 decades. By the way, in the last 2 decades, inventory to sales ratio for total business sales declined 15 to 20%. That is 15 to 20% savings in inventory carrying costs. And this is the contribution from the distribution side of the economy to higher structural productivity growth. The US economy is also emerging from a post-bubble, post-IT bubble environment. This adjustment is massive and it's structural in nature. We understand the IT bubble as a realignment of expectation to reality. This type of adjustment occurred after a few years into a major technology infusion or revolution process. Like electricity and radio, IT is now deeply embedded in our daily lives. Remember Moore's Law. 1965, Intel chairman Gordon Moore observed that the number of transistors per integrated circuit will double every couple of years. Its implication has become more profound these days to the overall economy than to a single sector. The tech infusion process has reached every corner of the society. Since the Moore's Law is still valid, it is logical to say that society-wide product and services replacement cycle has been shortened effectively, considerably, creating a constant need for capital spending growth. This, to some extent, may be reflected in strong capital good orders that we saw in recent quarters. The ongoing IT revolution has created many opportunities for market participants from the supply side, and to some extent, capping inflationary risks. We are in the middle of an IT revolution which reflects a phenomenon of mass customization. I call it mass customization. The automobile segmentation is no longer cars and trucks. It is the hybrid. It is the box type of vehicles that appeal to teenagers. It's the minivan that appeal to soccer moms, and SUV and pickup trucks for handy dads. A Walkman are not the music listening device of choice any longer. It's MP3 players or iPod. Communication isn't determined by telephone and fax alone. There are picture-taking cell phones and Blackberries. Now I have a Blackberry here, and John has a device that's much more advanced than what I have. I couldn't even tell the name. The development not only gives customers more choices at competitive price, but also gives merchants plenty of opportunities to play in unlimited number of segmentation and niche market. So it is a golden age. I truly believe it is a golden age for product designers and marketers. E-commerce is transforming the world of exchange, and we know exchange is the essence of commerce. A direct result of this trend is that it elevates the role of just-in-time and time-definite delivery in the supply chain. E-commerce reduces transaction costs and increases the velocity of transaction. As a result, demand increases and shipping activities increase. The logic is straightforward, and FedEx is fortunate in the sense that we are currently riding on both tides of an industrial upcycle and an e-commerce explosion. Now, when we talk about growth sustainability in this country, we need to address economic imbalance and the risks. The so-called twin deficit, current account deficit, and fiscal deficit are in fact related. As we know, in economic accounting, there is a relationship that public balance plus private balance should equal to the current account balance. The ratio of current account deficit over GDP in the US currently is about 5.7%, or about 650 billion. Huge, which is bigger than the size of Brazil or Spain. That means every year we need to attract that amount of money to finance the trade gap. Situation is very serious, but may not be as bad as it appears on the surface. Why? Because about half of US trade deficit is with the dollar bloc. With the dollar bloc. To maintain the pact, those countries need to recycle their net export earnings into dollar reserves. In a sense, they are financing the US trade gap. So the real challenge is in attracting the other half of the money on a sustainable basis. And this not only requires a positive differential, return differential in US asset market, but also some stability in the dollar. The issue isn't to correct the trade imbalance. The issue is to make sure the imbalance is on a sustainable condition. As far as fiscal deficit is concerned, the expected deficit at 3.8% of GDP isn't much higher than the historical average, about 3% of GDPs since the 1930s. Directionally, trade fiscal balance has already started to improve. The consensus is expecting the ratio to drop to 1.6% by the year 2008. By the way, do you know how the US public debt stacked against other developed countries? Now, in EU 15, before the expansion, the European Union, the public debt to GDP ratio was 63% last year. In Japan, the number was 135%. In the US, the number was 65%. So a very wise man told me not long ago, what he said is, since we are as bad as the others, let's just relax and enjoy. All jokes aside, directionally, the situation is improving. Now, the corporate balance sheets are in good shape. On the household side, with interest rate rising, we can probably expect to see household savings will climb. So what's my forecast for the US economy in 2005? Last year, I used the Super Bowl theory. It didn't work well. AFC team won the Super Bowl. Economy actually did pretty well. I also used the Chinese zodiac, the year of the monkey, in 2004. That worked very well. So I'll keep to the zodiac reasoning this time. 2005, starting from February 9, is the year of the rooster. Roosters are lively, candid, resourceful, courageous, generous, adventurous, confident, sincere, and talented. They also tend to be arrogant, nitpicking, suspicious, braggart, sympathizing, brazen, and self-centered. So what does this mean for an economy? It's your guess. I think it will be an interesting year. Now, the element for the year, for the rooster, the year of rooster, is metal. It's metal. Hey, this seems consistent with my theory of continued industrial upcycle. The color of a rooster year is white. It's white. And this is a good tip for those folks in the fashion business. It may also imply, it may also tell that for our friends in the poultry business, this year will likely to be a very good year. As long as you use FedEx to ship, that can be guaranteed. Now, when you ask a trained economist for anything, he or she will start by telling you, it depends. It depends. So let me cover myself well here. All the guesses I made here depends on the correct alignment of many factors. And since a good corporate economist has to be a one-handed economist. Remember Truman once to say, all my economists tell me on one hand, on the other hand, I need to see a one-handed economist. I'll just tell you what I think in a straightforward language without using the term on the other hand. The beginning of the second presidential term is always a great opportunity to tackle some structural issues. The current issues include tax code, social security, healthcare, and tort reforms, where the end goal is clear. The end goal is an ownership society with higher private savings. And the complexity of the current tax system imposes enormous compliance costs. Costs are estimated to be about 10% of total income collection, tax income collection, or about $120 billion per year. Among the options, I think debates will essentially surround income tax versus consumed income tax. The consumption tax, in fact, is consumed income tax. On the issue of Social Security, the system will not run into a crisis situation in the next 4 years. Will not run into a crisis in the next 4 years. But there is a consensus that the sooner the issue is tackled, the less trouble there will be down the road. Healthcare reform is a must. In economic terms, healthcare is a superior good. In other words, the higher the income, the even higher spending in healthcare. I'm not an expert in this area, but we all know it deserves close attention. On the monetary side, the situation is much more straightforward. We'll see a reversion to a more normal interest rate environment. This should provide a much more attractive return for traditional saving vehicles, for commercial banks, for example. Without knowing the exact rate of neutrality or normality, it is safe to say that there will be at least another 150 basis point increase within this year or through early 2006. Now, after a period of hesitation, long bond yield has moved higher since last October. As inflation moves higher, long-term interest rate should align with short-term interest rate more closely, at least directionally speaking. My current expectation is for the 3-month Treasury bill to reach about 3.5% by the end of the year from the current 2.25%, and a 10-year Treasury note to reach 5.5% from the current 4.2% by the end of the year. As for the Federal Reserve, the Federal Open Market Committee meeting in February, the Fed fund rate futures markets have already fully factored in a 25 basis point hike. So you can expect that next month. One of the biggest uncertainties this year will be the dollar movement. There's little doubt a weaker dollar will help those US exporters with sourcing from within the United States or from the dollar bloc. A weak dollar makes US export cheaper and foreign import more expensive. In theory, it helps to correct US trade imbalance. In reality, the impact isn't clear because US trade deficit continue to widen versus Eurozone and Japan in recent years, and this has happened despite a much weaker dollar versus the euro and yen. It is possible that global supply chain integration has reached a stage where the currency impact is much more complex. Maybe the impact's lag time is still longer. Maybe the dollar needs to drop below some threshold that can eventually trigger the change. But it is important to point out here that the risk of losing the dollar as the reserve currency is significant. A major reason that the role of the US asset market is playing in the world in a role that is far more influential than the size of the US economy is because the dollar is considered and used as a reserve currency. But since February 2002, the dollar has depreciated about 50% versus the euro, close to 40% versus the pound, and over 20% versus the yen and the Canadian dollar. At this point, if you look at the forward market, the expectation is no major realignment in the dollar versus other major trading partners. Debate on the dollar is dollar's ever elusive real equilibrium rate will continue. So I think we'll constantly see the debate. What is the true equilibrium rate of the dollar? Let's hope any change or movement in dollar will follow a gradual and orderly fashion. Now let's talk briefly about the oil. If we take the long end of the futures price as indication of the long-term equilibrium rate, the price is about $38 per barrel, Western Texas Intermediate. If you look at the December 2010 or 2011, the oil market will likely remain tight for some time, particularly in the light crude and the refinery area. So for business that's in production exploration area, I think the outlook is pretty promising. Lack of investment in the last 2 decades has created a situation of very limited excess capacity worldwide in the system. And this is occurring at a time when secular demand from China and India has increased and will continue to increase significantly over time. The developed world is also recovering from a cyclical downturn. Consistent with the analyst community, the current OPEC president has made it clear that the fair price should be lower than the spot rate. When he made the statement, when he made the comments, the spot rate was $44 per barrel. Oil price should come down from the current level with the passing of the Iraqi election, with production increases in the U.S. Gulf Coast refineries, and with warmer weather. So this is my brief comment on the oil side. Overall, in conclusion, I expect to see an above-trend growth in GDP in the U.S. about 3.5%. This is also the current consensus view. Both consumption and production will remain strong, with bias slightly tilted towards the industrials. I can see a 125 to 150 basis point increase in interest rate, both short-term and long-term, higher inflation, and modest decline in broad dollar index. But I will not be surprised to see the dollar strengthen against the euro by the end of this year. Let me end by telling you this story. The National Transportation Safety Board has recently funded a project to install black boxes on 4x4 trucks to determine the circumstances in the last 15 seconds before a fatal crash. It was surprised to find that in most states, the last word drivers were cuss words. Only in the southern states, like where we live, answered differently. About 90% of the final words were, "Hold my beer and watch this." Not sure how true the story is, but it definitely shows a positive attitude. Now, loosely speaking, there are only 3 economic agents: the government, corporations, and consumers. If we all maintain an upbeat attitude, the economic outlook will be upbeat. It's just that simple. It's all about behavior. Natural scientists create models to mimic the world. Economists and business planners create models for the world to follow. Maintaining a positive attitude brings positive changes in our economic life. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Gene. The next topic will be the state and local economy. I did want to remind you that if you have questions, I think the procedure is if you'll write those on a card and then raise your hand somewhat high, someone will be around to pick those up. Otherwise, you're going to get my boring questions. Jeff Collins, I know, is a person familiar to many of you in this room. He has served as the director of the Walton College Center for Business and Economic Research since 1999. He oversees applied economic research as part of the college's outreach mission, and recent studies have been conducted for the city of Fayetteville, the Arvest Bank Group, the Benton County Prosecutor's Office. I even talked with Jeff yesterday about possibly undertaking some work. In September of 2004, he completed a study with the Millikan Institute, which analyzed opportunities and challenges faced by the state of Arkansas to develop high-wage, high-skill employment. The study was conducted for Accelerate Arkansas and funded through the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation. Study recommendations are designed to make the state more competitive and raise per capita income. And Mr. Collins is published in scholarly and applied journals, and he's regularly interviewed by national and local media. He earned his PhD in economics from the University of Tennessee in 1996. And with that, I'd like to introduce Jeff.
I'm absolutely thrilled to be here and amazed that so many people showed up to hear economists talk. I had a joke all prepared, but Gene told it. And there aren't that many good econ jokes, as you might imagine, so I'm sort of up here without a paddle. I've been asked back now, this is my 5th year here. I don't know what the guys were like before me. I didn't get to see them. One thing I will tell you is I'm amazed at how this event has grown, and in fact, as it grows, we had to raise the price. And I thought, well, we're going to raise the price and fewer people will come. And of course, that is not what happened. More people came. And so clearly, Dean Williams, we didn't raise the price enough. That's a standard economic attitude. I'm going to talk a little bit about the state. And let me preface my remarks by saying this. We are at a very important place in terms of state development. Our competitors, whether they be other states or other nations, are actively engaged in improving themselves. They are making critical investments in order to raise the incomes of the people that live in Mississippi, Tennessee, Texas, or Shanghai. And I think it's very important. I think it's an excellent opportunity for me to follow these two distinguished men who have international and national experience to be able to talk to you about why I think it's very important for us to begin to make those critical investments and understand how very competitive the world is and how we fit into it. We as Arkansans fit into it. Let me start off by talking about the title of my presentation, which is A Lighter Shade of Pale. It's not just that I'm a Procol Harum fan, but that as I look at the economy, it's a good, stable economy, but it's not the kind of colorful, vibrant economy that people, I think, grew to expect out of what came out of the end of the 1990s. You know, we are a television generation, and perhaps our retention isn't so great, and so we look back at the very recent past and tend to judge everything that comes next based on what we saw just a few years ago. And if you do that, you're going to look at this economy and perhaps be a bit disappointed. But in actuality, it's a stable, growing economy, and growing around trend. And if you look at the state of Arkansas, what you're seeing is an economy that's growing much like the national economy. We look at earnings growth of about 4 to 4.5%. We look at employment growth of, unfortunately, probably a little bit under 1%, but reasonable unemployment rates, no inflationary environment. This is a pretty stable economy. Let me talk briefly about unemployment rates. One of the interesting things that when you look at unemployment rates in the state of Arkansas is that we have been just a tick or two above the national average, and that was true except for during the recessionary period where we were actually a tick or two below, which tells you that in order for us to better the nation, we need a recessionary environment. Unfortunately, I don't think that the federal government is going to accommodate us. If you look across the MSAs, the Little Rock, North Little Rock MSA, the Fort Smith MSA, and then the Fayetteville, Springdale, Rogers MSA, it's much as you would expect. Little Rock and the Fort Smith area have reasonable unemployment rates, but of course, in Northwest Arkansas, we have an amazingly low unemployment rate. And those of you who are employers know how difficult it is to find talented people to fill vacant positions. Fortunately, we've been very good at recruiting folks to come to Northwest Arkansas, but we are going to have to continue to do that to facilitate growth. If you take a look at non-farm employment trends, the first graph is the United States, and what you see from 2000 until the current period is a pretty modest employment growth. A dip during the recessionary period, and then some improvement in the last few years. What's interesting is keep an eye, just think about this graph and then look at the next one. This is Arkansas. Y'all see any difference? I don't. We are, again, very, very similar to the national economy. What I do want you to notice, though, in those last two graphs is look at all the volatility around the trend line. The trend line is a little happy face, a little smiley face there. And if you look at it, there's a considerable amount of volatility in terms of employment growth around that trend line. Little Rock, North Little Rock, essentially this is flat. If you look at employment growth in that MSA, frankly, it's basically flat. But what is more troubling, and my friends from Fort Smith know this all too well, is the Fort Smith MSA. One of the themes of my talk, one of the things that I want to hit on at the end when I talk about policy and I talk about where we're going, is the importance of cooperation. As I look at Northwest Arkansas, I think of it as a region that extends south to Fort Smith and begins really in southern Missouri. It is a location, a geography where people have very shared interests and where the potential for cooperation could lead to, I think, a very dynamic, robust economy. Compare Fort Smith to what we see in Northwest Arkansas. I want to take a minute, a dramatic pause here, and let you look at this graph. And let me tell you that as an economist, I don't see graphs like this very often. This is unbelievable. That's a straight line with very minimal volatility around that trend line. We add about 450 jobs a month in Northwest Arkansas. About 1,000 people a month move to Northwest Arkansas. And that is a significant growth engine for the state of Arkansas. It cannot be understated. What is going on here is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And I would have expected fits and starts. And what we see is just strong, consistent growth. I do not see a topping off of growth, perhaps a retrenchment, building the momentum so that we can start our next phase of growth. What I see is strong, consistent growth. And in fact, if you look at that graph and you take those numbers all the way back to 1994, it's still a straight line. Just unbelievable. If we look at employment and we disaggregate employment, ask where is the new employment coming from? Not surprisingly, much of our new employment growth comes from growth in the service sector. Business and professional services, health and education, and then hospitality and leisure. Also not surprisingly, there's a great deal of variation in terms of incomes across those sectors. And one of the interesting exercises I had an opportunity to engage in the last few months was to ask the question, what would the state of Arkansas, what would income in the state of Arkansas have looked like had our industry mix remained what it was a decade ago? In other words, had we held on to all of that manufacturing employment as a percentage of overall employment? And what I can tell you is the decline in manufacturing in the state of Arkansas has had a significant negative effect on incomes in the state of Arkansas. And what that sets us up for, what I think that means to us, is that the service sector growth will be there, but we have got to find a way of creating high wage, high skill employment in the state of Arkansas. Why? Well, there's this little thing called Lakeview. It's not just Lakeview. I think that anybody in their right mind would want to see us do something about creating high wage, high skill employment in the state of Arkansas. But we have, through court-ordered mandate, a responsibility to improve our K through 12 system, not just in terms of the variable costs that revolve around teacher salaries, but also in terms of the fixed cost, the facilities. And I know that many of you have read the newspaper and know that we're talking about billions of dollars here, a significant amount of money. Now, if you're going to come up with those dollars, and they're going to be tax dollars, there's sort of two ways. You can either raise the rate, which we know eventually will have a very negative impact on the base, or we can work to expand the base and hope we can grow ourselves enough revenue without having to tax ourselves into poverty in order to meet our obligations, our constitutionally mandated obligations. Now, let's talk a little bit about growing ourselves. These are statistics for Benton County. If you look at growth in Benton County by sectors of employment, the only sectors that declined in Benton County are natural resources and mining. Manufacturing was essentially flat, and state government declined. And I don't know your political persuasions, but the fact that state government declined probably is not something that is keeping you awake at night. What I want you to look at is that the change in total earnings from Q2 of 03 to Q2 of 04, an additional $67 million of wealth. Like a big helicopter came over and dumped $67 million in a year on top of us. Wow, can it get better than that? That's 10% change in total earnings, 10% change in 1 year. And 10%, so what? There's no reference point for you. Let me give you a couple of reference points. This is Washington County. Washington County, the sectors that declined
remained flat were wholesale trade, transportation, warehousing, and utilities, and leisure and hospitality. And my friends from the city of Fayetteville, I want you to know I don't think this had anything to do with the smoking ban. Absolute change in total earnings, $44 million. Percentage change, 7.6%. Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Pulaski County, sectors that declined. Natural resources, construction, manufacturing was flat, transportation, warehousing, utilities, information was essentially flat, financial activities flat, local government declined. Far cry from what you see in Benton and Washington County. If you look at the change in total earnings, $91 million, but of course it's a much bigger area, and that represents only a 4.9% change, 4.9%. Give me a second here. Here we go. So, what can we say in relative terms? For the state, during that period of time, $407 million of additional earnings, 5.3% change. What that tells you is that Benton County was about double the rate of growth as the state average. If you add Benton and Washington County together, those two counties out of 75 counties in the state of Arkansas account for 27% of the growth in earnings over that period of time. If you add in Little Rock, North Little Rock, you're talking about half of the growth. Or excuse me, not the MSA, but the county, Pulaski County. You're talking about 50% of the growth and about 36% of the labor force. To give you some, because obviously part of this growth is new people moving in, and another part is that people who live here, their earnings are going up. What's really interesting is that 27% of the change, again, came from the two counties, Benton and Washington County, but they represent only 15% of the labor force. What this tells me is that this region is becoming wealthier and more robust economically, especially relative to the state and other major population centers in the state. And getting back to the idea of growing the state economy and looking for ways to grow our way out rather than tax our way out of the constitutionally mandated needs of K through 12 education. When I look around at where is this going to take place, well, I hope it takes place in lots and lots of places around the state, but boy, these statistics really tell me that there's one place I can count on, and that is Northwest Arkansas. What's the impact been on Northwest Arkansas of all this growth? Bentonville office space. Our baseline estimate in fourth quarter of 04 was there was about 4.4 million square feet. There's going to be an additional million plus square feet by late 2005, by late this year. Rogers retail space. Let's look at another indicator of where we are. 2.9 million square feet was the baseline in the fourth quarter of 2004, but we have an additional 2 million plus square feet in the pipeline to be finished by mid-2006. All of that wealth is directly leading to growth in retail amenities for a burgeoning and increasingly wealthy population in Northwest Arkansas. Centerton Residential, and I don't know how many of y'all have ever been to Centerton. I had never been there until recently I had cause to go. And I don't know about you, but if you've been there recently, you go, wow, what's going on here? It is phenomenal the amount of dirt that you can see being turned in Centerton. Our baseline, the supply of lots in the third quarter of 04 was about 1,150 lots. But there were an additional 4,200 lots that had been working their way through the planning process and had been approved, but where the subdivisions had not yet been started. 4,200 lots. How many people used to live in Centerton? It couldn't have been many, a few hundred. This is unbelievable population growth, brought about by, of course, our friends at Walmart and the vendor community, but it has been the impetus for growth, the drivers for growth, continue to expand. So now we no longer rely on Walmart and the vendor community and Tyson and J.B. Hunt, but we increasingly rely on the growth in healthcare services, and I do not see this abating anytime soon. We have the potential, very critical word, we have the potential to grow substantially over the next decade to 2 decades. But that potential will only be realized if the growth is facilitated. We have got to facilitate our growth. And in order to facilitate growth, we must have short-term and long-term investments in our infrastructure that allow those 4,200 lots to be developed in Centerton and allow people to go from their homes in Centerton to the places they work in Bentonville. And if we don't do that, those houses won't sell. And if we continue to experience excessive congestion on our infrastructure, if we continue to struggle to make the necessary investments in wastewater treatment and water supply, we will not achieve the potential that this region has for growth. Employers here will find it increasingly difficult to bring people to Northwest Arkansas. They will look to site employment in other geographies, and that will be to our detriment. Moreover, it will be to the detriment of a state which is fundamentally poor and requires the growth that can be facilitated in Northwest Arkansas to grow our way out of our fiscal problems as opposed to taxing our way out of our fiscal problems. There remains much work to be done, but the work will be accomplished if we adopt a spirit of cooperation. All too often in the state of Arkansas, it has been in my experience that we hunker down and we tend to, for some reason, believe that one person's benefit must come at a cost to myself. And that mentality leads to divisiveness in an era when the rest of the globe has determined that the best way to succeed, the best way to grow, the best way to have a vibrant economy is through cooperation. We must learn to cooperate, and that is why, on the one hand, regional cooperation is so important. I think it's absolutely critical that Northwest Arkansas look to Fort Smith as a partner in our economic development. And it isn't about what we can do for you or what you can do for us, it's what we can do together to make this a better place to live, to increase standards of living. Moreover, we need to destroy the barriers that exist currently between other parts of the state and Northwest Arkansas, where we are seen as fat and happy. The streets are paved with gold and every day is sunny, right? And we need to make people in the state understand that economic growth in Northwest Arkansas is good for them. Where one Arkansan does well, it benefits all Arkansans. And as long as we remain divided, as long as we allow petty regional jealousies to impede real progress, we will tax ourselves to death because we will not allow this economy to grow its way out of its fiscal problems. So, that is my message. If anything, we live in a place that is an anomaly, and thank God for it. I love living in a place where our economy is a kaleidoscope of colors, and it is not beige or tan or not even gold, like Goldilocks' hair. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Jeff. There's never been any question about whether he's passionate about what he does. We do have some questions? I might ask a question that I wrote down while I have a chance to look at these green cards. And it's been one that's in my mind. I'm directed to John, and if you would field this question, and that is, thinking to some of the other industries in America, and when you think back to the automotive industry that was such a great industry here and still is today, but eventually was copied in some other ways, and competition really became very difficult. How does Walmart, and how do you see Walmart in regard to that? Is there a chance that somebody's going to take that model, and really become tough to deal with around the world?
We have some outstanding competitors around the world. Some of them are not in the United States. For instance, the second largest retailer in the world following Walmart is a company called Carrefour out of France. And they're just amazing in what they do on the food side, the supply chain. So retailing is tough. It's always changing. It changes every day. There's not many industries that you put your prices out for your competitors to look at every day, and your merchandise and your best practices every day. So we're always trying to stay ahead. We think when it comes down to it, we only have one competitive advantage, and that's speed. Being quick, moving ahead, staying ahead of competition. And every morning, it starts up again, and it's a very competitive market around the world.
Thank you. Jeff, this question is to you. First it says thanks. What is your best idea for getting people to see and agree with your views of meeting demands of roads and other infrastructure?
Well, I think the first thing we have to do is, and I've worked very hard to do this, is get out there and talk to people. One of the problems in Northwest Arkansas is people still think of us as isolated. We don't have enough folks from Little Rock coming up in here and coming up here to see what we do, and we don't go down there often enough to deal with them. And maybe this is because I'm in a policy arena more so than you all, but I feel the need to go out and talk to people about what growth in Northwest Arkansas can mean to other parts of the state. I consistently look for opportunities to build relationships, and I think that's exactly what we need to be doing, is looking for those opportunities to build relationships and always and everywhere be as transparent as possible about what our agenda is. My agenda is to improve the standards of living for all Arkansans, and it doesn't matter to me where they live.
Thank you. Gene, a question, a FedEx question. When fuel prices drop, will FedEx prices return to previous levels? I'm glad they didn't ask me the utility question. The answer to that would be yes in the utility case, but Gene, would you like to field that?
Yeah, before I answer the question, let me just quickly make an announcement. I forgot. My presentation will be available for download on CBER website. Okay, the question about the fuel price, the industry-wise, we have this fuel surcharge practice. It aligned roughly with the movement of the fuel cost. We are certainly hoping that the fuel cost will decline because the issue is more of an economic impact. It's just like an added tax on top of consumers and business. It negatively affects the total demand. So that is the direction. That's why we are very concerning. Hopefully, as I indicated in my speech earlier, that price can drop quickly to its equilibrium level. As a result, that we no longer need to have a fuel surcharge. Hopefully, that really depends on the movement and the level of the fuel costs down the road.
Okay, here's one that I would just offer to the panel in general. It's one we heard this morning from the students. Impact of continued foreign trade deficit. And would either of the three of you like to take a shot at that?
Impact of continued foreign trade deficit on the economy. Yeah, if you notice this morning's GDP release, it was a little bit lower than the market expected. 3.1%, pretty decent. It still follows the transition from the early cycle rebound recovery to a more sustainable mid-cycle expansion. 3.1% quarter-over-quarter rate, 3.7% year-over-year rate. If you look at year-over-year rate on cumulative basis, it is declining gradually. One of the biggest reason that we see a lower than expected fourth quarter GDP is because of an enlarged trade deficit. And that was mainly due to, partly due to the surge of the oil price on import price side. The size of current U.S. import is so big that it requires export to grow at twice the pace of import growth to simply keep the trade deficit constant at current level. So it's very difficult to see that we'll see dramatic improvement on the trade deficit side unless a few conditions are satisfied, including higher domestic savings on the U.S. consumer side, more open market in the overseas market so they can demand and use more of U.S. import, and also some stability on the dollar movement. And the fiscal conditions, improvement of fiscal conditions. So you have quite a few conditions that will work towards the improvement of trade balance in a sense that will eventually become sustainable. But currently, it is a big concern.
Would anyone like to add to that? Jeff? This is sort of an interesting one. What impact will demographics, in other words, low birth rate, have on China 20 to 30 years from now?
China has 1.2 billion people, and I talked about, so they have some people there. I talked about what the changes, the demographic changes are less about birth, but about taking people from the rural economy has 80% of the Chinese people today, and over time that'll move to the exact opposite, that 80% will be in the cities. To me, that is the big move. The jobs are being created in the city. The infrastructure has to be created. If I could show you a picture today of Shenzhen, China, where our headquarters is, you'd see construction going up everywhere. In fact, we like to say that the Chinese national bird is the building crane, because it just goes on and on everywhere you look. You'd have 100 different buildings going up. So I think that is the demographic trend that really one has to focus on in China.
There's a question here about steel, and again, it's directed to China, and that is, in 2004, China's demand for steel drove prices up across the globe. And would either of you like to comment about what that demand might be in 2005? Will there be an easing, or do we believe we'll continue to see still a very high demand rate and affecting steel prices?
I'll make a quick comment on that. For a while, the analyst community was very concerned about the collapse of commodity prices. If you look at the commodity price index, it did drop on a year-over-year basis after a huge surge late 2003, early 2004. But if you look at the detail within the commodities groups, metals is still doing pretty well. Metal pricing power is still pretty strong. One reason is because the consensus reading of Chinese economy is not a hard landing. It is a soft landing, more stronger than expected soft landing, and they characterize it, they call it extended cycle. China is in the process of so-called heavy industrialization, so structurally they require more import of steel, for example, metals for construction purpose, build infrastructures, capital goods facility, and so on. So this is not a cyclical phenomenon, it's a secular trend. So I would believe that the continued strong demand from China, at least on the metal area, will continue, especially certain specialty metal will continue, high-grade specialty metal will continue for some time to come.
Thank you. Doyle tells me we have time for one more question, and John, I can't let you off the chair here without asking it because it's on TV today. And could you comment on the Procter & Gamble Gillette merger and what effects that might have on Walmart?
I received an email this morning on the combination. I was surprised. We had people last night at the dinner from both Gillette and P&G. They didn't say anything, amazing enough. But I think you'll continue to see a consolidation of both suppliers and retailers around the world. It's really part of globalization, getting scale, getting mass, trying to service so many people, 6 billion people around the country, around the world, is very difficult. And so bringing major companies like that, I think will make both of them much stronger.
Great. Thank you. And I want to thank the panelists for such a great job. And we almost stayed on time, Doyle, but we didn't have to turn the dog loose. And I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Give it a round of applause. Good. We appreciate that. Some very good information, very insightful, be very helpful to us. On behalf of the Walton College, we would like to give each of you a token of our appreciation, but in the interest of time, I'll hand that to you when the program is over, if that's okay. But this will be a way that you can remember your participation in this wonderful event for us in the Walton College. I'd like to call Congressman John Paul Hammersmith to the podium to make a special presentation to our out-of-state panelists.
Doyle, on a matter of personal privilege, and I know you want to keep this on time, but it's going to be my last opportunity to do this. I want to join Dan Grubbs and Marianne Greenwood in just saying what a treasure that Doyle Williams is to the Walton College of Business. He's absolutely wonderful, and I want to express my appreciation to him for that.
You've been very special too. Very appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And one more thing, I have a question. Gene Wong, how many chickens can you put in a Federal Express 777? No, it's my real pleasure and honor to help induct and present two people with Arkansas Traveler Certificates. In doing that, I want to use the words from our governor, the distinguished words that many of you know, and let me just quote the governor, and it's on their plaques. To all ye who see these present greetings, know ye that the governor of the state of Arkansas, in the name and by the authority of the people of the said state, as vested in him by the Constitution and the laws of the state of Arkansas, proposing special recognition for the distinguished accomplishment, does hereby appoint and commission Gene Wong, Harold Carell, as Arkansas travelers who are hereby authorized and commissioned to serve as ambassadors of goodwill from Arkansas to the people of other states, the people of the nations beyond the borders of the United States, or wherever this ambassador of Arkansas, these ambassadors of Arkansas, may hereafter travel or reside. I think what the governor is saying, that he's sorry he can't be here. He's glad you're here, and he wants you to always speak well of our state. Thank you.
As you know, an event like this doesn't just happen. It really takes the work of many hands, and we have been fortunate to have an outstanding faculty and staff who've worked so hard for this kind of event, and especially as we continue to grow, and this year's being at all-time level, many hours that they devoted to making this the successful occasion that it really is. And so I want to give special recognition to the staff of the Center for Business and Economics Research and our Office of External Relations and all the other staff in the Walton College who've worked on this program. I'd like for them all to stand, and let's recognize them collectively. Would all of you please stand that have been involved in helping from the college? Thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Mary, if you could escort a couple of people forward, we would appreciate that. As many of as you know from what's been said, this will be my last forecast luncheon to preside, and I'd like to take a moment of personal privilege and recognize two staff members who have really made a special effort for this program to be successful. They have worked year in and year out and have taken the leadership role and contributed so much. And early on, Nancy Hart, where is Nancy here? Nancy, would you come on up here? Mary Ann, would you bring those? Early on, Nancy Hart was the leader of the team for this effort and did such a great job. And then she was, part of that's been passed off to Cheryl Barger, and we really appreciate her work now and the long hours that she's put in to make this successful. So I'd like to present each of you, come on up ladies, with some flowers to say thank you so much for the job that you've done. Thank you so much. I know really hard work and really worth it. Thank you. They symbolize the work of so many in the Walton College and the great job that they do. I really wish to express my personal appreciation to all of you who have served as sponsors over the years and for your personal support, and I know you will continue to support this event in the years ahead. Before we adjourn, let me remind you that leave your forecast for next year on your tables, and please complete the evaluations of today's program, and that would be very helpful to us, and they'll be picked up by our staff. And as you leave today, you will be presented with a folder that describes some of the programs the Walton College does for our community at large, that are offered by our Center for Executive Management and Executive Development, CMED as sometimes we call it. And I hope that you'll take notice of that. We believe that we are developing some excellent programs that will be a benefit to many of your organizations, and look forward to seeing you participating in some of those events as well. So again, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure over these 11 years and for this luncheon, and we thank you again for your tremendous support. Have a good afternoon.